Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm joined by another Central Floridian himself, and actually a native like myself, although he's a young 20-something Professor Pixel. And I got to sit there and say, Pixel, as we're in a new year here, 1/1/23, as we're continuing our Dark Shadows revival review here. We're on Season 1, Episode 4, of course. I think the show has just been delicious. It's not been cotton candy fluff, because on a rewatch for me after a really long time, I got to sit there and say I continue to be enthralled by certain things, and I just love it. We don't have any hunky man meat in this episode. We get voiceovers, we get magic books that write themselves, we get spells, we get witches, we get all sorts of things. This is just a terrific episode, and I thought to myself watching this, holy crap, this is such a great example of showing we keep it simple, show us the characters, just advance them a little bit. No other crap. Give us the fog machines. Give us some sexiness. Give us some this, that, or whatever, and maybe one or two dumb decisions to lament. Otherwise, man, it's fantastic. This has not slipped at all since the first episode too. Things develop a lot, and we're starting to see where this is supposed to be going. What's your initial take?
You know, I haven't talked about Dark Shadows all year. But no, this is another fantastic episode, especially considering our cliffhanger with the last one. I didn't know exactly how we were going to start, but this episode is so good, I watched it twice. So,
But when you take us off, the only thing I want to sit there and say about the voiceover that we get here is, while it's effective and it draws you in and it reminds you of the end of the last episode, it also has some foreshadowing with it. It tells you about how somebody's going to come to an answer. Like, well, does that mean what happened with the last episode, which is the one doctor? So go ahead, start us off.
My name is Victoria Winters. No,
I know, right?
but no, we get to go ahead and get straight into the aftermath of how we were left last week. Julia is rightfully worried about what Barnabas is going to do to Dr. Woodard. So she goes ahead, she contacts the sheriff, and they're going to go down and see, because they have an exciting new lead. We need to go ahead and go down, see this. And they go and see Michael Woodard, and he is there, alive. He welcomes them in. It's a dark and stormy night, but he's like, oh, yes. Well, you see, I was being silly. I don't actually have any information. I'm very sorry. And you can tell the Sheriff Patterson, is just done. He's like, okay, you said you took pictures? Give me the film. And Dr. Woodard does do that. And actually, it almost goes smoothly. They almost leave, except a certain craving comes to the good doctor. And his teeth just gnashing out for a little bit of blood behind the sheriff means that things are taking a turn. And so Dr. Woodard becomes animalistic, trying to feast on him. And then at a moment when he realizes, oh crap, this guy can fight back, he goes ahead and tries to attack Julia. And Julia, that's her friend. She can't kill him. But they are able to eventually put an end to Dr. Woodard. And it seems that the good doctor has become the good vampire, has become dead.
I made a comment in describing this episode here about Michael Cavanaugh, the guy that plays the sheriff. He has this certain type of intensity about him that's different than being a tough guy or like that, and he always creeped me out back in, I think it was Forced Vengeance with Chuck Norris in like 80, 81. There's a guy in a boat, I will take you apart piece by piece. And every time he walks or talks in here, I feel like this is getting ready to happen. The more lines that they give him, the more tense it's going to be, because you're right. We're going, wait a minute, what's going on? And of course, he gets the secret microfilm or whatever before all hell breaks loose. And I like how when they stake the doctor, it's not just quick and easy. It takes kind of both of them to sort of do it. And the thing I wanted to bring up too is about Julia Hoffman, this doctor. We know that she seems to she has the hots for it. And I kept thinking, she's got these huge, massive eyes that we've talked about, only magnified by these gigantic John Lennon on steroids type glasses, which is kind of a thing back in the 80s and 90s to make you look smart. And I forgot that Barbara Steele, who's the actress that plays her, she was a model back in the day, like a lot of Italian horror type films. So I'm not sure if she was in one that we'd covered here on the Xtreme Movie Show, which we cover all sorts of things if you check that out. But I just looked at her, and she has what you would call a look, and her look is she has those big eyes that can look instantly terrified versus whatever. And in here, she's not been playing the scared look at all. But I wanted to point out to her because she's definitely not a young person at the time that this was filmed. She was middle aged, looks great, looks phenomenal, but she does have a certain sort of elegance about her too. And I know she seems to have the hearts for Barnabas, who we said's been simping out a little bit, but I'm wondering where this is going to go. If she's going to be like, another potential beauty or what. It's hard to say, but the opening part here with them actually trying to kill the vampire, and then they go back to the studio. They kind of let this go on for a few minutes. I mean, it's a noticeable chunk of the episode, and I like how they kept it up because they're giving the sheriff a little bit more screen time. He's got blood on his shirt and all that. It makes us feel like we're in a mystery a little bit without immediately jumping to Barnabas and everything else there too. I liked it a lot. I think it's really, really great. And then I wanted to talk a little bit too about Gene Simmons is the elder patriarch of the Collins Manor here. She's talking in the next scene here, and I'll let you take over that here in a second. And I just thought to myself, you know who this reminded me of, because she's a British actress who's obviously beyond middle age at this point. She sounds exactly, for those of you who listen to our once a month James Bond reviews, tonight's going to be For Your Eyes Only, the 12th one in the Bond franchise with Roger Moore from 1981. She sounds exactly like Judi Dench. And I'm going, holy crap, just the cadence, the tone, the way that we always think British people seem to do the speaking parts so elegantly here too. So we get a chance to see her and Roger having a conversation about stuff, and we get to see him being a bit more stern. And it's just a brief moment before they cut into Barnabas and Dr. Hoffman continuing some stuff on here. But I just wanted to mention, because we haven't talked a lot about the other ladies of Dark Shadows, and they're not wimpy characters, and at least to me at all. They're very significant. They get significant airtime, and they're good, frankly. I was really hooked in seeing a little bit more about them, rather than just being, okay, they're going to come in and say one or two lines and we forget about it. It has meaning when we see them.
So I'm going to have to disagree about the Dame Judi Dench, only because I kind of like Dr. Hoffman's voice a little better.
No, I'm not. It's not the voice quality. It's the diction, the speaking of.
Oh, okay.
So that's all I'm simply mentioning here, because one is obviously I don't know if she's German or Italian, actually, even though she's in Italian films. So her delivery is a little more whatever, but just the elder Collins lady is very. She seems like a patriarch. She seems like a rich person. It's very believable. Like Judi Dench is the only one who could shoot James Bond an asshole that we're like,
Oh,
man,
yeah.
she's got the goods. And I'm
Absolutely.
saying it's so striking, the similarities between those two. It just jumped right off the screen at me when I saw that too.
Well, it's very good to go ahead and touch upon her, because pretty soon after the whole ordeal with that, they go to the sheriff's station.
Yep.
They look at the photos. They're all blank. Something has damaged the photos to where they're all this same. Oh, look, there's paper there, but the paper has no writing on it. What's happening here? And because of that, we get to, of course, go back to Collinwood, where, like you said, Elizabeth, she's there. She has a scene with Roger, which is in this household, we love Roger. He's great. Even when he's horrible, he's great. But he has a scene here with Elizabeth because she's just feeling down. She feels like something is terribly wrong. And it only lasts a moment, but it's a very good scene. But it's not long until we go back to, of course, Mr. Collins, the real Mr. Collins. And Julia is there giving him the injection. He's feeling fine. Oh, look, it doesn't even really hurt anymore. And he's allowed limited time in the day. But you can tell that she's starting to wane away from his plans. And so he pretty much tells the good doctor, this good doctor, not the other good doctor who's dead, goes ahead and tells her, listen, someday, very soon, because of you, if we finish this, I'm going to be able to give this music box, I love the music box, to the woman I love. The woman who will take the place of the person I cared for 200 years ago. We know that's Vicky. But Dr. Hoffman has a way of looking at Barnabas that you can tell that she has a little hope that it's her.
Yeah, and I don't know. She's almost turning me in this episode where I can't figure out what her ulterior motive is. Like, I don't feel like she's going along just to do it. It's like, no, she's in charge of making sure this happens, right? And so it's she's got a vested interest, but I can't figure out what it is. Um, I don't know. It's weird, and even though Barnabas scares me for different reasons, and we joke about him beating Willie, but Mr. Collins here, he is the man, and I'm terrified that he's just going to be whatever. I mean, he does that such a great job. And anybody that watched the Quinn Martin production in the '60s, not The Fugitive, which was tremendous, but another one called The Invaders, he starred in, was kind of like almost an X-Files before it, sort of, kind of. He does a great job in there of conveying a sense of terror. Here, it's the opposite, and I'm like, damn, this guy's acting, even though it seems a little, stuffy. Oh, he's an older guy. He's just blah, blah, blah. I'm going to ignore him. It's really, really good. And I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Much like I appreciate the scene that comes up next here, where we talk about how we've seen Sarah Collins, the ghost, and she's not what you would call an appealing looking young girl, and she's dressed in period piece, which I think should be very telling for what's probably going to be happening in all the allusions to history, because right now we see him and he's playing with himself, right? And he's doing a little battle thing, and she comes up.
That's far too much information, but yes.
But I think it's significant, and what I like about it is that if nothing more, it makes you think of the history of Collinsport and what was going on back then and how it's significant. Because Victoria comes in and she's talking to him, and I like her interaction with him because she's like,
You're talking.
She thinks
You
he's
were
full of
talking to
shit.
Sarah, right?
But okay, but no, normally you'd be like, oh, the kid's full of shit, but I'm going to humor him, right? But she's almost listening to him, and the problem I have with her decision making, she heard the voice, then she ignores it, right? And I got to say this about her frumpy ass outfit, okay? Because it's exactly what it is. It forces you, when you wear something like that, as long as it matches your skin tones and colors and all that, to kind of not be drawn in and look at, like, if a guy's wearing a suit, well, oh man, it's a great looking suit. The suit should be invisible enough, but good enough where it forces you to look at the person's face. And then here, all I can do is stare at her damn face, because I'm telling you, she's got this dreamy expression, this look, and I don't know if that's just the actress, but she's just stunning. I'm not saying she's smoking hot or sexy or sultry. It's so appropriate, because she's basically a dingbat to me, and I'll reference this a little bit later. But while I'm thinking about this, as she gets done talking to Dave, she walks out. She sees Sarah the ghost. And even though these are cheesy special effects and they don't cost a lot to do, they're effective, because she leads her and beckons her with her finger to a door that's covered in quote unquote cobwebs. And she somehow finds a dusty old key at the bottom of it that allows her to open it up. And what is this? It's another extended sequence here. It's the library where it turns out she is given a diary. And it's whose diary? It's her diary. And they talk for a minute. And of course, like ghosts that seem to be able to give you certain information, they choose not to. And maybe it's easier to deal with a kid or whatever like that. But the point is David was never wrong. David's at least being honest with Victoria. And he's bored. He wants a friend. Nobody wants to talk to him and play with him. He is that kind of a kid. And so to see Sarah and Victoria have a little conversation about stuff, I thought was kind of cool. They're definitely upping the ante for what's going on here without being so incredibly whatever about it too. And I liked it because it says, hey, there's a little mystery in the house that nobody seems to know about it. Because, the way it happens here at the end when David comes in and they're talking about it, they kind of get yelled at a little bit about this room being off limits and stuff. And I just thought it was a very effective scene, bringing us to about halfway through the episode. Did you have any particular strong feelings about this?
Well, the yelling happens in a different room a little later, but for this one, when I went ahead and saw that Sarah was revealing herself to Victoria, it's a very big deal, and to go from that into the locked away wing of Collinwood, it just sets off all the right things. But to go ahead and give her the diary and to go where we go next it almost feels a little too quick-paced. She didn't keep the diary for any time.
Yeah, this next scene
Because
upset me. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
because she goes with Barnabas on a walk down the beach, and she basically says, "I have a gift for you," and pulls out the diary. And Barnabas recognizes it, obviously. It's his little sister Sarah's diary. But he gets really upset suddenly. He says, "Where did you get this?" And you can tell Victoria, like, she says, "You're hurting me," because he grabs her wrist. And he calms down a second, and he goes ahead and apologizes and says, "Oh, well, you know how much my family means to me, my ancestors. So this is great. Thank you." But there's just a way he's able to turn the conversation that I kind of do like, because he hurts her, and she's really looking
She wants to
upset.
be bent over and be railed, and we
Yeah.
know that, and she's doing everything she can to get it, and Barnabas is so friggin' clueless. And you're right, he's charming, but he's basically a eunuch. It's like, I know you've been dead for 200 years, so you really can't put up, but for God's sakes, you kiss her and all that. You've got digits, you can do stuff to turn her on, but she's totally into you, bro. And for her, after seeing Sarah in the earlier scene, to just give this up so here makes me hate her. I think she's not just a dingbat, she's dumb and stupid. So I'm actively developing negative feelings towards her because of how she is. Am I
Well,
wrong?
you could also see that she is being kind, and she's a little. She doesn't know that Barnabas is evil. She doesn't believe Barnabas is evil like David did, like David does. So she sees that giving this
She's
to
blinded by
Barnabas.
lust.
Yeah. But it does get us to our next scene, and I have to talk about this next scene. So Barnabas is reading the diary to Willie, which boys getting together to read their sister's diary. That sounds like a
Right.
episode of The Wonder Years or something. But no, he goes ahead, he reads it off. He reads it like poetry. Funnily enough. But he's trying to figure out why he thinks that Sarah led Victoria, even though Victoria may not know. She knows, but she's not going to reveal that. That she wants to send a message. What is she trying to say? And as he's flipping through the book, he gets to the end, and inside is a hidden picture. It's a picture of a lovely young blonde woman, and Barnabas, all of a sudden, is filled with rage. He crumples the photo in his hand as Willie is trying to ask, "Well, who's she, Barnabas?" And he tosses it in. And that's when the fire roars out, and out of it comes this ghastly figure of a young, kind of blonde woman. But the figure only lasts mere moments that Barnabas stares at shock and horror at. But Willie is terrified at his feet, just holding on to his leg. And he goes ahead and gives an answer. This is Angelique, a woman, Angelique, his true curse in life.
Everybody's telling me on Twitter, she's a witch, bro. And I'm like, I fucking know that. I just want to get up to that point.
I know. Yes. His true curse in life that has followed him from the past, these centuries,
so evil, so
to destroy him.
It's horrible, and I love every bit of it. That even now she reaches across the centuries to destroy me. That's like, and then they've got the little lightning thing going on, and it's like acting 101. I'm like, he's still so compelling as an actor doing this. And I just wanted to point out the scene. I was still kind of mad at the way Victoria's treating it, because I know she wants them and all that, but it's like, you're hard enough, you could pull anybody in town, for God's sakes. And you're giving them this, especially after meeting the ghost. You should have been listening to him, because David's been right about everything, and David's a smart little kid who can sense the supernatural, and you're just not buying it. And other people momentarily will convince her of things, but it's just, I'm really starting to dislike her a bit. Although I will say, though, I love the simplicity of the shot of them walking on the beach, because it's that widow's wail or whatever it was called, where the women would jump down, when they found out that their husbands out at sea weren't coming in, and it's mentioned before. Then they go there, right, and then we see them walking there. So I like how they're using these um, different ways to kind of really hammer the point down of some of this quote unquote history of it. And so when they're walking on the beach there, and we see that they have that simple 2 camera shot where the one person's in frame, you see the side of the other one going back and forth as they're talking about the diary. But when they walk off, because they're standing there having a conversation, they walk off camera, and then the camera does not quite a crash zoom up to the cliff ledge where you see them being watched by the ghost Sarah, which I thought was just a nice little shot. And again, it's not an expensive thing to do. You don't need CGI. It's obviously done outside wherever they filmed it, which California, of course, the Greystoke Manor mansion, I believe. And it's effective. These things work, because even the ghost thing that was kind of cheesy, that's a special effect, but it worked. And this scene here with Angelique coming out of the fire was great. And the whole time I kept thinking is now I know what Willie reminds me of. I know he's good and he's loyal, and of course we always think of Renfield with Dracula having whatever. But I go, no, it's supposed to be almost like a familiar with witches, like a black cat or something. And what are they? They're supposed to be loyal. And what's loyal? A dog. Because literally, Willie, as this is going on, well, gee, Barnabas, I don't know what's going on. He like cowers behind his like legs and stuff, and I'm like, holy crap! It just hit me all of a sudden that that's how bad it is. But yeah, you're correct here in this next scene too, because we cut back to David being tutored by Victoria, and he follows, or she follows him around, because he had fallen this really nice impressionist type painting. And I have to tell you, as a young 20-something, I don't know how much you're into art, but back in the 80s, it seemed like Impressionism kind of made a little bit of a mini comeback in the public eye a little bit, especially Monet, Manet, and a few others. And that's what this looks like, because it's like, well, what the fuck? Where did these come from? Are they done by Monet? Who is it by somebody else? We don't really know, but it leads us to an art room where, yes, this is the scene that you referenced earlier where she gets yelled at about how this is being closed off too. And you had mentioned it, and obviously you clearly remember more than me, other than the fact he's wearing a pseudo ascot, which I thought was tremendous, but his acting here is on par. So you take the scene and carry us forward.
Yes, so here in the art room, we get to see as Victoria's admiring these pictures, and Roger, of course, gets a line with that. But as she's looking, he pulls down there are all kinds of shots, but the main one that's covered up is of this woman in the buff, but facing the wind. Tasteful. It's a very tasteful nude. Facing the window, the great window of Collinwood, which I could talk more about, but that really is in a discussion about the other Dark Shadows. But here, it has her, and she's holding a child, and David is clearly affected by it. But when Roger comes in, he says basically, get the hell out of this room. And David runs away instantly, and Victoria's trying to take all the blame. And I mean, for the most part, it is her fault that they stayed as long as they did. You hear Roger as he's saying, no, you haven't been brought here to admire anything. You're here to teach my son. Now get out. And as Vicky is leaving, he does this dramatic turn and says, Miss Winters, everything within this room does not exist anymore. Yeah. And that's when he goes to the other artist in his life, the one now in his life, Miss Maggie Evans.
Smoke show.
Yep. They get together, and we get to see them before and after, and they have a quick talk about what you know what I want. And Roger pretty much can't have that. Why? Well, we don't get those details until a minute. But meanwhile, David is different. He is walking around Roger's study, collecting items, putting them together, and he makes this little doll. And
a voodoo doll, buddy.
Yep. And he sets it ablaze. And Roger, meanwhile, in the midst of conversation with Maggie, basically saying, I can't marry you, but I'd like that if I could. He starts screaming out in pain, and Maggie gets a flash. It is a wonderful fisheye lens that gives her a glimpse of David staring evilly at this burning doll. It's so perfect. It's just the right look. It's just perfection, pure hatred. But that's when Vicky comes in. She puts out the fire, and David snaps out of it. He's confused and goes ahead into Vicky's emotional embrace to hug her. And that's when Maggie makes a decision to go ahead and call Collinwood. Elizabeth, she gets her second scene here. She gets told about it by Vicky, and then Maggie calls her down. Well, I got visions, but I'll take a pause here and let you catch up.
Yeah, I like the scene. It's pretty intense. Actually, it's kind of frightening because obviously, David's not in his right mind, so it seems like he's being influenced unduly by some outside force, perhaps Angelique. But Roger's acting here, I thought, with them, we know that they're having an affair, and it's like, oh my goodness, adults are having an affair. Color me shocked. But I think they do a good job of conveying that they seem to sincerely care about each other. Not saying that they're going to get married or have kids and the whole American dream nonsense stuff. But it's handled, I think, delicately enough because they don't really mention so much about Roger's wife, but it starts getting to that point because he's like, she's in an asylum. She's not like other people over in, I think it was England, right? So we're
That's
getting
what they claim.
That's what they claim, right? We don't know this, but what do you do when you get all mad and pissed off and all that? Well, you want to go to your side piece, your mistress, and get a little action. And it seems like they're not just being portrayed like it's so easy to do where you go, oh, my mistress wants me to kill my wife, or I'm going to do everything, we're going to run off and all this. It doesn't have that feel to it. It's like they're in a conundrum. They're finding themselves, and presently they don't know how to work themselves through it. And I think that's Roger's saving grace, besides being the stern man of the house here. It's like he doesn't quite know how to handle this the right way, and he doesn't seem like he's being a dick about it. I just think that's a good point, because it's just, what do you do when you're having conversations? You have them like you do here with Vicky, where she goes to meet her, and I don't know why this scene seems to work, because it's some like place on the water, but it gives us a little bit of what's supposed to be, outside of Collinsport, maybe a little bit, but it's got a nice little view to it.
Well, no, it is Collinsport.
But
Out
I
of
mean, we don't see
Collinswood.
Collinsport because everything's inside the mansion for the most part, or on the grounds, right? So I like how they had this little toast to it. And so what do the girls do? Well, they really open up and they talk about it. And she goes, hey, you got to be very careful with David. He tried to kill his father today. I saw the visions. Yes, I'm having an affair with him. I'm telling you because whatever. And again, I thought, especially with the scene before, and this kind of runs into it, when you're talking about affairs and all that, it's very easy to roll your eyes and dismiss it and all that too. But when you have the supernatural preposterousness of what's been going on in this episode and this whole season, I think that's pretty good, because she's like, she doesn't say, oh, you're wrong. She just talks to her girl, I saw you put out the fire, and it almost did kill Roger. You've got to understand, this is how it is,
There's something very important she says.
And that would be what?
That would be that what you mentioned. David's mother, Laura, is over in England in an asylum. I do have to say, though, if you haven't caught on, England is never where anyone goes.
Just saying.
I'm pretty sure she's not.
I'm just conveying the information that's presented to us.
Yes. You see, one of the great things about the old show that really, I do get that feeling here, because I've seen that. You figure out things early on. You have a 30-minute episode releasing every day, 5 days a week. You figure out a plot line and the ways that it can turn, and the overall, okay, this is the bad thing that's coming. And it's all about the journey getting there.
Yes.
There's so much of that feeling for me watching this show, because I know the things that were happening, and I knew it when I was watching it originally, but you have those twists and those turns. So I can't say for exact certainty that Laura and Angelique aren't the same here. I just know that they aren't in the original, so I'm thinking that they aren't here either.
Let me say this as we get to our last act, because you're bringing up something here that's extremely important, that while you being a fan of the original, having seen all of that, and maybe even the House of Dark Shadows and some of the movies, Dan Curtis, the guy that made all this, was involved in all this and wrote a lot of it too. So it's supposed to be, or was at the time when it came out in 91, I believe it was, in the January. It was supposed to be kind of like the condensed version. It was supposed to be for someone like me at the time, a teenager or in my early 20s going to college, that I never really saw the original but knew of it, and I didn't know what the big deal was. And when older people told me about it, like they would tell me about Elvis or other things that were huge in the 50s and all that, you just kind of pencil in the back of your mind and go, okay, what is the big deal? Maybe I'll check it out. How do you introduce it to a new generation? Because the 80s is which is the basis of the Extreme movie show and what we do here on Extreme TV. It's kind of like basically saying, hey, some of these old things are going to be popular again, like Leave It to Beaver got rebooted and a few other things too. So it was the first time, I think, in pop culture that really happened a lot. But yeah, I think it finishes strong here and all that too. So why don't you wrap it up for us here and take us out?
Barnabas is planning a lovely evening with Victoria. He has the table set up, the candles are all lit, and he's talking to Willie about making sure the final preparations are done when he notices on the table a diary, Sarah's diary. And he goes ahead and says, Willie, what is this doing here? Basically saying, why the hell did you put this here? And Willie is, of course, clueless. He didn't put it there.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how it ended up there. But he goes ahead. He goes ahead. He sets it on the counter. He tries to forget, tries to move on. And that's when, with a big burst of wind, the windows open and the candles go out and the fire in the fireplace blazes brightly. The pages turn and suddenly on the book, to Willie's horror, there's writing appearing. My dear brother, Sarah is writing to basically tell Barnabas, hey, stop messing around with that dark-haired girl. You're going to end up in more danger than you know.
Yeah.
And Barnabas doesn't want to hear it. And Willie's trying to just be supportive and say, Barnabas, this is from your little sister, Sarah. Barnabas puts him up against the wall. You know how we like him to.
Yeah.
Willie! And basically, he eventually says that he's sorry in his Barnabas way and asks Willie to go put up the book, please. And Willie does, sets it on the desk. It flips open. And of course, what's inside but the picture that was thrown into the fire of Angelique. And that is where we end.
Great episode. Loved it. Check it out. Ed, I see you're here in chat. Posted the link there for you, for anybody else there too of it. We'll probably put that out there on Twitter too as well. But great stuff. Looking forward to it. We're getting ready to hop over at 6 p.m. for our once a month James Bond review we're going to be doing for your eyes only. So we're going to hop over there. Hope to see you there, Ed, and everybody else. And any last little comments here, Pixel, before we call it a night?
We want to thank you so much for joining us on the Extreme Movie Show. And we ask you to please stay extreme and remember, The Dark Shadows is a Dan Curtis production.
Good night. I love it.